We await a ceasefire. This proposal is on the table. A full and conditional ceasefire, one that lasts long enough to provide a necessary foundation for diplomacy, could significantly bring peace closer. Ukraine has long proposed this, our partners are proposing it, and the whole world is calling for it. We await a clear response from Russia. Russia will have to end this war anyway. The killings must stop. Ukrainian forces will be ready to respond symmetrically to ensure fairness. We have repeatedly heard from our partners that they are prepared to strengthen sanctions against Russia if Putin rejects a ceasefire. Time will tell. Here in Ukraine, we have absolutely no problem engaging in negotiations. We are ready for any format. I will be in Turkey this Thursday, May 15th, and I expect Putin to come to Turkey as well, personally. And I hope that this time, Putin won't be looking for excuses as to why he can't make it. We are ready to talk, to end this war. Thursday, Turkey. President Trump has expressed support. All the leaders support this.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to meet Vladimir Putin this Thursday. High-stakes meeting could take place in Istanbul. Meanwhile, Russian dictator Putin has rejected a proposal for a 30-day ceasefire in Ukraine. So why did President Zelensky propose a personal meeting with Putin, and what will happen this week in Turkey? Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said Sunday he would travel to Turkey later this week to meet Russian dictator Vladimir Putin to discuss a necessary basis for diplomacy to end the war. On Saturday, Zelensky and the leaders of European allies spoke with Donald Trump over the phone and stressed they are ready for an unconditional 30-day ceasefire starting Monday. During the 50-minute call, Zelensky and European leaders told Trump that if a ceasefire is agreed upon, Ukraine is ready to begin direct peace talks with Russia. Vladimir Putin responded to the terms later that day, and he didn't accept ceasefire proposal. He rejected offer and said that he is ready to begin direct talks with Ukraine on Thursday. What they're saying White House before Zelensky agreement to meet Putin in Istanbul, Trump also called on Ukraine's president to accept the terms in a post to Trust Social. Trump says that if Ukraine participates in these talks, it will be able to determine whether or not a deal is possible. Trump urged Ukraine to make the deal and to conduct this meeting. He also added, quote, "I'm starting to doubt that Ukraine will make a deal with Putin, who is too busy celebrating the victory of World War II, which could not have been won without the United States of America." Ukrainian official also said that Zelensky will be in Turkey on Thursday even if Russia doesn't agree to start a ceasefire on Monday this week. Meanwhile, European leaders participated in high-stake meeting of Coalition of the Willing in Ukrainian capital, the city of Kyiv. Countries leading the Coalition of the Willing, this is a group of over 30 countries who pledged to strengthen Ukraine to deter Russian aggression. Building up Ukraine's military capabilities and supporting Ukraine militarily will be a key deterrent against Russia, according to the leaders of Coalition of the Willing. This will require supplying Ukraine with robust quantities of weaponry to deter future attacks and invest in Ukrainian defense sector. A force comprised of foreign troops could also be deployed to Ukraine as a reassurance measures. These talks still continue. US President Donald Trump has stressed both sides to quickly come to an agreement to end the war, but while Zelensky agreed to an American plan to hold the war for 30 days, Russia has not agreed to that. Instead, Russia has kept up attacks along the front line, which is more than 1,000 miles, including deadly strikes on civilian infrastructure, and this is war crimes committed by Russian soldiers with no obvious military targets.
It is for Russia, it's for Putin to come to the table for a 30-day unconditional ceasefire, and there must be clear sanctions if he fails to do so. There is real unity on that. We need to be clear that that is one of the main outcomes we want from this meeting of the Coalition of Willing here this morning.
All of us have now to back this unconditional ceasefire for 30 days and increase pressure on Russia. And it means unconditional ceasefire in sky, on land, at sea, that should be long enough and that could be renewable. And we have to increase the coordination with the US, taking as a basis what Lindsey Graham put on the table, but a strong coordination, and you are on the right side of history. Because you protect your sovereignty, your territory, and doing so, you are at the forefront as well of the protection of the whole European territory and what we built after the Second World War. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Putin's goal is to procrastinate and not make substantive concessions. It is therefore essential that we keep the United States on board and convince President Trump. Ukraine is not the problem. It is extremely constructive. It is Russia that does not move unless we increase pressure.
We are here to show our unity, and this unity is not an abstractive slogan, it's something real. And unity means also solidarity. And solidarity means readiness to sacrifice something. And we are here also to demonstrate that Europe, our countries, the whole West, that we are ready to sacrifice a lot to support you, because your fight is our fight. Unconditional ceasefire means unconditional ceasefire.
At the same time, Russian dictator Vladimir Putin seems to be uninterested in a full 30-day ceasefire. He rejected this proposal from Ukraine and European allies. Also, Vladimir Putin invited Ukraine to participate in negotiations in Turkey, in Istanbul, under the Istanbul deal terms. As we know, such negotiations took place in 2022. Russia demanded full capitulation of Ukraine, and they would like to limit the size of the Ukrainian army and limit Ukraine's military capabilities. So would Russia set these ultimatums if it would not plan to attack Ukraine again in the future? Also, Vladimir Putin invited Ukraine to participate in negotiations under Istanbul deal terms. As we know, such negotiations took place in 2022. Russia demanded full capitulation of Ukraine. They would like to limit the size of the Ukrainian army and our military capabilities. Would Russia set these ultimatums if it would not plan to attack Ukraine again in the future?
What do we see? What are the results of the ceasefire proposed by Russia for the Victory Day? The Kyiv authorities, as you can see for yourself, did not respond to our proposal for a ceasefire at all. Moreover, after our proposal was announced and this happened, as you remember, on May 5th of this year, the Kyiv authorities already launched large-scale attacks from May 6th to May 7th. The strike involved 524 unmanned aerial vehicles and a number of Western-made missiles.
Also, Russian dictator Vladimir Putin is overplaying his hand, according to former Trump's national security advisor John Bolton. Former national security advisor Ambassador Bolton said during a recent interview that Russian dictator Putin may be at risk of overplaying his hand with President Trump during the negotiations over ceasefire deal. Bolton, who is a critic of Trump, said that Russia is still suffering economically from the sanctions that Western Europe and European allies have imposed over the 3 years of war, but he argues that Putin is still in a very strong position politically. Quote, "But as the war drags on, I think his position does get weaker. The real question is whether between the efforts of US, the efforts of Europe to get Ukraine-Russia ceasefire, it's going to happen. Putin has already gotten a lot of concessions for what he wants. He wants to hold on to the territory Russia sides in Ukraine, but I think at this point he may be at risk of overplaying his hand with Trump." Bolton said also the president has warned that if the deal is not forged, Russia could suffer from more sanctions. Both Vice President J.D. Vance and Secretary Marco Rubio have said that if progress in talks does not come through, the US could pull out in the facilitating role. On Wednesday, Vance said while speaking at the Munich leaders meeting in Washington, the administration thinks that Russia is asking for too much in peace negotiations that could bring an end to the war, largest land conflict in Europe since the Second World War, and said, quote, "I wouldn't say that the Russians are uninterested in peace, but what I would say is right now the Russians are asking for a certain set of requirements, a certain set of concessions. We think they are asking for too much," US Vice President said. Meanwhile, according to NBC News, Trump's envoy Steve Witkoff relied on Kremlin entrepreneur in meetings with Putin to end the war in Ukraine. President Donald Trump's special envoy broke with long-standing protocol by not employing his own translator during 3 high-level meetings with dictator Putin, opting instead to rely on translators from the Kremlin. By using Kremlin translators, he runs the risk that some of the nuance in Putin's messages was missed and he would not have been able to identify the text. According to NBC News, also Michael McFaul, a former US ambassador to Russia, said that using the Kremlin's translator was a very bad idea. Putin and Vitkov put the real disadvantage. Quote, "I speak Russian and have listened to Kremlin's translators and US translators at the same meeting, and the language is never the same," McFaul said. Having a US translator present also ensures a more accurate written account of the meeting for the rest of the government, known as a memorandum of conversation, as Ambassador McFaul said, who is a professor of political science at Stanford University. Also, US President Donald Trump's envoy Steve Witkoff still is working in his role is to present a list of 22 demands and proposals regarding the end of the war personally to Russian dictator Vladimir Putin. According to one of the Western officials, the American and European allies have prepared a letter of conditions with 22 proposals, 22 terms, including 30-day ceasefire. As we know, Vladimir Putin rejects this offer and rejected full ceasefire. Also, this letter meets Putin's requirements that the US will not support Ukraine's accession to NATO. Quote, "If Putin wants to get out of the situation, then this is a way out," officials said. Witkoff will have to present them to Russian dictator Putin, and the publication does not specify when this meeting could take place, whether in Russia or around the world somewhere in the world meeting in the international stage. That's all for today. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, and glory to Ukraine!